I never believed in ghosts, not the way the tourists in New Orleans did. Anyway, I had come here to capture the pulse of the city, to see the vibrancy of its culture, its history, its legends. The architecture alone was enough to fill my sketchbook for months, and I was eager to dive into it. But I had no idea how much one warning from an old man would change everything. It all started in an ancient cemetery, a place the locals called the Whispering Fields. The name itself intrigued me. The cemetery was centuries old, nestled in the heart of the city. Overgrown vines crawled up the cracked mausoleums and crumbling stone tombs, making it feel like time itself had forgotten this place. The air always seemed thick with history, and I could almost hear the echoes of long-dead voices when the wind shifted. It was quiet and peaceful, perfect for an artist like me. On my third day there, sketching the elaborate crypts and the twisted branches of the trees, I met him, the gravekeeper. I had seen him before, shuffling along the paths, his worn boots dragging in the dirt. He had a crooked back and a face as weathered as the cemetery itself. The few times I'd seen him up close, I noticed his eyes, the kind of eyes that bore into your soul, like they had seen things most people would never believe. "Excuse me, miss," he called out one afternoon as I was hunched over my sketchbook. His voice rasped like dry leaves. "You should leave. The sun's low." I glanced up from my sketch of an old mausoleum, frowning. "What? Leave? I'm just drawing." He took a step closer, lowering his voice as if he didn't want anyone else to overhear. "You need to leave before the sunset. There are things here, things you don't understand, things that come with the night." I raised an eyebrow, a bit amused by the old man's cryptic warning. "I'm fine, really. Just try and get some inspiration." His expression hardened. He was serious. "Madame Odette doesn't like intruders, especially those who wander too close to her resting place." I looked at him, unsure whether to laugh or roll my eyes. "Madame Odette? A ghost story." The gravekeeper nodded solemnly, his eyes narrowing. "She was once a woman, a beautiful woman, betrayed, murdered. Her spirit seeks vengeance on anyone who dares desecrate her tomb, and she will find you." I was skeptical, of course. Who wouldn't be? People in New Orleans had a flair for the dramatic, and stories of vengeful spirits were nothing new. I smiled politely, packing up my supplies. "Thanks for the advice, but I'm sure I'll be fine." That evening, after a quiet dinner at a local cafe, I returned to my apartment, an old, creaky place in the French Quarter. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the streets. As I settled by the window, enjoying the cool evening breeze, I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something was wrong. A sound, soft, barely perceptible, reached my ears. It was like the rustle of fabric, the whisper of someone moving just outside my window. I stood up and drew back the curtains. And that's when I saw her. A woman, or rather, a shadow of a woman, stood just outside in the garden. Her face was hidden in the darkness, but what I could see sent a jolt of terror through my body. Her skin, pale burnt, seemed to glow in the dim light. Her eyes, dark as a void, were fixed on me. Her lips barely moved as she whispered my name. "Lila?" I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't heard anyone approach, and the woman, she wasn't a person. She couldn't be, not with that face. I blinked, and she was gone. The night passed in a blur of anxiety. I couldn't shake the image of her, the burned, haunting figure. But when morning came, I tried to convince myself it had all been a nightmare, a product of an overactive imagination. Maybe, that is, until I opened my sketchbook. There, in the center of the pages, were drawings I had never made, sketches of myself, surrounded by flames, the woman with the burned face lurking in the background. Her eyes stared out from the page, just like they had from outside my window. And I knew, somehow, that she wasn't done with me. Panic set in. I couldn't ignore this. I rushed back to the cemetery, desperate for answers. The gravekeeper was there, just as I expected, hunched over a tombstone with a broom in hand. I rushed up to him, my voice trembling. "You were right. She's after me. What do I do? How do I stop her?" The gravekeeper looked up, his eyes full of grim understanding. He didn't speak at first, as if weighing whether to tell me the whole truth. Finally, he sighed and motioned for me to follow him. Madame Odette, he began, was once a woman of great beauty and wealth. She was a lover of a powerful man, but he betrayed her. She trusted him, loved him, and he murdered her, left her to die in a fire in her own home. When her body was found, the fire had burned her face beyond recognition. I shuddered at the thought. He continued, her spirit never rested. She searches for those who desecrate her tomb, those who wander too close to her grave, and punishes them for the injustice done to her. I swallowed hard. But how do I stop her? He looked at me with pity. You can't stop her, not unless you uncover the truth of her death. She needs someone to tell her story, someone to reveal the truth of her betrayal. Only then will she be at peace. That night, I tried to burn the sketches. I thought that maybe, if I sever my connection to her somehow, the curse would end, but as the flames danced in the small trash bin, something went wrong. The fire spread too quickly, too violently. My apartment went up in flames in an instant. I grabbed my things, barely escaping as the walls cracked and the heat became unbearable. Smoke filled the air, but I ran out into the streets, gasping for air. When the fire trucks arrived and the flames were finally doused, I found myself standing on the edge of the cemetery once more. The air was heavy with tension, and I knew, deep in my bones, that I wasn't alone. I turned slowly, and there she was, Madame Odette. Her burned face glowed in the moonlight, the same hollow eyes that had haunted my sketches now staring into my soul. "You have come back," she whispered, her voice echoing in my mind. I stepped forward, trembling. "Please? I don't know what to do. I don't know the truth of your death, but I'll help you find it. I'll help you tell your story." For a long moment, she did not speak. Then, with a gesture, she beckoned me closer. "You will be my voice," she said, her form becoming more transparent, her voice softer, but full of urgency. "You will paint my story so that the world knows what was done to me." And that's how it began. I became a vessel for her story, painting scenes of betrayal, fire, and vengeance. Each piece I created was filled with her spirit, her pain. I became known as a haunted artist, the one who captured the tragic story of Madame Odette in every brushstroke. But it wasn't just my fame that changed. I was no longer the same. I could feel her presence beside me, always watching, always waiting. She had chosen me as her medium, her storyteller. And no matter how far I ran, I knew I would never escape her. The warnings were clear, but I had ignored them. And now, I was trapped, forever the unwilling voice of a vengeful spirit. Lila's 22nd birthday wasn't about parties. It was about adventure. I've never been one for typical celebrations. It's not that I dislike birthdays. I just prefer experiences over gifts, memories over cake. So, when my roommates Mia, Connor, and Ethan suggested we explore Blackthorn Cemetery for the night, I thought it was a perfect way to kick off my next year of life. We had heard whispers of the forgotten crypt buried deep within the cemetery. The legend spoke of a wrongfully buried priest whose restless spirit haunted the tomb, seeking vengeance for the desecration of his final resting place. I was intrigued, not frightened. After all, it was just a story, right? A bit of local folklore to spice up a boring town. After a quick, quiet dinner, we grabbed our flashlights and piled into the car. Connor, always a skeptic, had brought along a Ouija board, convinced it would be a great way to debunk all the myths. Mia, the quiet one, wasn't so sure, but she agreed nonetheless. Ethan was just in it for the thrill of the unknown, as usual. We arrived at Blackthorn Cemetery as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting long, eerie shadows over the gravestones. The wind whispered through the branches, sending a chill down my spine. The place had been abandoned for decades, and the cemetery's neglected condition only added to its sinister aura. "Spooky," Mia muttered, adjusting her jacket as she held her flashlight out in front of her. Connor smirked. "It's all just rust and superstition, Mia. Don't let your imagination get the best of you." Ethan nodded in agreement. "Exactly. It's just an old graveyard. Nothing to be afraid of." I couldn't help but smile at the banter. Maybe I was the only one taking this seriously, but there was something about the air here that felt different. A sense of foreboding lingered in the space between the tombstones. The moon was full, casting its pale light across the cemetery, illuminating the cracked marble and crooked iron fences. We walked slowly through the rows of graves, past centuries-old markers covered in moss, until we found the crypt. It looked even more dilapidated than I had imagined. The stone door was partially ajar, creaking with each gust of wind. Its dark interior seemed to suck in the light from our flashlights, leaving an impenetrable void. "This is it," Connor said, his voice oddly reverent despite his earlier mocking. He set down the Ouija board on the stone ground in front of the crypt. I hesitated. Are we really going to do this? I mean, what if something happens? Ethan grinned, waving a hand dismissively. "It's just for fun, Lila. Relax. We're just here to get a little scared. Nothing's going to happen." Mia shot me a look, her face pale, but she nodded anyway. "We should be fine. Just a game, right?" With that, we sat down in a loose circle, the Ouija board between us. Ethan placed his fingers lightly on the planchette, an amused smirk on his face. Connor did the same, and soon Mia and I followed suit, albeit with a bit of reluctance. For a moment, there was nothing but silence, save for the distant howls of wind. The air around us seemed heavier, colder, as though something was watching us. "Is anyone here?" Connor asked, his voice teasing, almost mocking. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, the planchette began to move, slowly at first, then faster as it jerked to the letters LEAV. I froze. "That's weird. I didn't move it," I said, looking at Ethan, who had the same confused expression. Connor laughed. Okay, funny. Who's playing tricks here?" But the atmosphere had shifted. A sudden chill crawled over my skin, a sensation I couldn't shake. I felt a cold pressure, like fingers lightly brushing across my hand. It was so real, so unsettling. My heart skipped a beat. Before I could react, the door of the crypt groaned open, a low, grinding sound that vibrated to the ground beneath us. A dark figure stepped into view. The figure was tall, draped in tattered robes that billowed as though caught in an unseen wind. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but the air around it was thick with malevolence. The figure pointed a skeletal hand toward Connor, who had been laughing just moments before. "Connor?" I whispered, my voice trembling. I reached out to him, but before I could say anything else, the earth trembled beneath our feet. Tombstones cracked, and the ground erupted as skeletal hands clawed their way from the soil, reaching for us. I screamed, and we all scrambled to our feet, racing away from the crypt. But Connor wasn't fast enough. He tripped on a broken gravestone, and before any of us could react, invisible hands gripped his legs, dragging him backward into the crypt. "Connor!" Ethan shouted, trying to reach him, but the door slammed shut with an ear-piercing bang. It was over, just like that. The coldness that had descended on us seemed to evaporate as quickly as it had come, but the weight of what we had just witnessed pressed heavily on my chest. We stood there in stunned silence, our breaths shallow, our minds reeling. We didn't know what to do. The crypt door was sealed tight again, the tombstone surrounding it undisturbed. Connor was gone. There was no trace of him. We made our way back to the car, and though we kept looking back, half expecting to see him running after us, there was nothing, just the cemetery, silent in its eternal stillness. The next morning, we went back to the cemetery, hoping, praying, that we had imagined the whole thing. But the crypt door was still closed, and Connor was still gone. No one in town had seen him. He had vanished without a trace. We never spoke of it again. But sometimes in the dead of night, I can still hear the faint sound of a whisper on the wind, a voice calling my name. And when I close my eyes, I see the figure in robes, pointing. And I wonder, who will be next to pay the price for disrespecting the dead?